Well, I'll get to Iran in just one second, but quickly respond to that. I don't think anyone's in favor of meaningless talks. I would hope that our State Department and the White House would have some knowledge of Iran or Cuba or whoever they're talking to. But I think what was really interesting in the debate last night was sort of this reflexive diplomacy could lead to problems sort of response from two of the candidates, where Senator Obama instantly said, I am not afraid, basically, of engaging with the rest of the world. That doesn't mean you show up and do exactly what they want you to. It doesn't mean that certainly you go in unprepared and meaningless, but it means that you are not afraid of engagement. You're not afraid of diplomacy. We're strong enough and smart enough to get something positive out of that, just like Reagan was strong enough and smart enough to get something out of talking to the Soviet Union.
So give me a quick sense of, and because then I want to come to Tony and I want to come back on the Cuba thing. Quick on Iran, because that's it's incredibly important.
Right.
And they're incredibly difficult.
Incredibly important country for us to engage with, because essentially, they are trying to build a nuclear weapon. We are in Afghanistan and Iraq on both of their borders. If we're there, given the level of animosity between the two countries, they are going to be messing with us to one degree or another, and we are not militarily in a position to stop it. Therefore, we have to figure out, are there common interests? And there actually are. A stable Afghanistan, a stable Iraq is in the interest of Iran. So I think engage, discuss, and go forward with that common interest and build from there, and I think Senator Obama would do that.
You can define engage?
Discuss. I mean, certainly at high levels. Certainly
Everything?
Secretary of State. I wouldn't set preconditions. I wouldn't necessarily say we're going to talk about everything, but I certainly would not set preconditions.
Tony, back to Cuba.
Well, let me first note that this debate seems to be following the pattern of the other CNN debates on behalf of the Dodd campaign and the Biden campaign. I note that we're on the far left and far right of the podium. And I also note that the Biden question came about 22 minutes in to the debate. But that said, on Cuba, in all seriousness.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Look, it's not a hypothetical. The time is now. The time is not in January 2009. Cuba is changing right now. Castro may be nominally in power, but he is a very fading asset. And while I recognize that reports of his death are often premature, he's on his way out. And the time is now to actually act, to prepare the transition so we can help the Cuban people make a transition to democracy, not be tempted by other models such as Venezuela. If Joe Biden were president today, even with Castro still alive, he would look at trying to start to do that. How? Start to increase the remittances that people can send back, allow more visits, get direct mail going, and set up an enterprise fund so that the Cuban economy can start to grow immediately upon a transition away from Fidel Castro.
I asked that question because it's sort of a reality check with specifics, but it seems also a template for the way you obviously see your candidates engaging this world. Just some specifics now. And
Frank, before you leave Cuba, could I say one more thing?
Sure.
The Governor Richardson, as a governor, has been one that has found common ground. And on Cuba, even before your incident that you put in place, he, on the trade issue, sent an agricultural mission. I led it for him down there to talk with them about selling agricultural products. It's a very narrow little area right now, but it could be incredibly fruitful for American farmers. And so I just throw that out there as the kind of thing that he does, is look for the common ground, look for the place where there can be agreement, both in the United States, where, as we all know that have voted to drop the embargo, the farmers are really the moving force behind it, among many others in the United States.
I want to pose some questions to each of you about things your candidates have said or proposed, but then also open it up to others of you to discuss, elaborate, and answer with respect to your own candidates. First, to Representative Miller, Senator Edwards has spoken a lot about his foreign policy direction and where he wants to go, and he's called for this cabinet-level director of development. Also talked about a 10,000-person Marshall Corps to deploy, to reinforce, stabilize, aid weak societies on humanitarian missions, development missions, work, that kind of thing. How would this be implemented? What role would this cabinet-level director really play? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, Senator Edwards has also called for a substantial increase in international aid. It is what we should be doing out of common decency, and happily, it is what is also in our self-interest. We are not well served by a world filled with poverty. And there are 10 million children under the age of 5 each year who die from preventable diseases. There are 1 billion people right now who do not have clean drinking water. There are 2 billion people now in the world who don't have proper, decent sanitation. It is a world of poverty, and we need to address global poverty. We are spending far less than we have in the past. We're spending 22% of our budget on our military and 1% on diplomacy and international aid.
So this director of development is doing what?
Is overseeing our efforts around the world to try to relieve global poverty.
Tony, what is Senator Dodd's approach to this? Is it by appointing somebody? I'm sorry, Senator Biden. Apologies, Senator Biden.
We're often confused.
You and Senator Biden.
It's just the senators, you know.
I think the approach that's just been outlined is very much where Senator Biden's coming from. But I think we've seen a sea change. And hard as it is to acknowledge for some of us, we also actually have to give this administration a little bit of credit on this issue. We spent the 1990s, as your first panel suggested, kind of getting out of the business of foreign policy and engagement, in part because it seemed that the world was allowing us to do that. I remember the very first State of the Union address by President Clinton, for whom I worked. Les Gelb, the President of the Council on Foreign Relations, counted the words on foreign policy in that address, and there were 47. The world's changed a lot since then, and President Bush has started to put significantly more money into some of these programs, and that is laudable. But it's not just a question of more money, it's a question of how you use the money. Let me give you one example. HIV/AIDS. The President has had a rather extraordinary initiative to put more money into HIV/AIDS, but I have profound doubts about the way that money is used. For example, he's directed virtually all of the money into his own program to deal bilaterally with about 15 African countries. That's terrific, but there hasn't been a lot of money going to the Global Fund, which addresses the growing AIDS problem in other countries that his fund doesn't hit. Second, we've let ideology take over some of what we do in foreign assistance, including HIV/AIDS, instead of facts. So some of the money that we spend is tied to abstinence-only programs. It's a mistake. They don't work. They take money away from programs that do work, like mother-to-child transmission programs. So, yes, more aid, more focus, but it's really a matter as well of how you use the aid.
Does it I want you to respond specifically, because part of this is to explore not just similarities, but also some of the distinctions between the candidates. Does Senator Dodd think that this needs to come to a particular cabinet-level individual? Is this something that... Sorry, Senator Biden. You're going to have to deliver my personal apologies to Senator Biden.
They say the more you say it, the more it becomes true. So just keep saying Dodd.
Senator Biden believe that there's going to need to be a particular individual elevated to elevate the issue?
Well, we already, to some extent, we have that. The Bush administration started to do that. We have a Deputy Secretary of State.
So what Senator Edwards is not necessary?
I'm not sure that that's necessary. I think we'd have to look at that carefully to see if it makes sense in terms of moving these issues forward. But what I think Senator Biden would focus on are two things. One, rationalizing the whole process. As many people have pointed out, we have our own government working at cross purposes. They used to say that the Reagan administration sometimes the right hand didn't know what the extreme right hand was doing. We have a similar issue now where we have multiple departments working on assistance to the same countries, not knowing what each other are doing. So you need to rationalize the process. Whether that takes elevating it to a cabinet level position, I would hold for another day.
Thank you, Senator Biden.
Thank you.
Question from the floor, actually, but playing right off this. How would President Clinton or Obama work to educate the U.S. public to accept an increase in foreign aid from less than 1% of GDP to 3 to 5% of GDP? Big jump. Well, let's start with the questioner from the floor, President Clinton.
Well, I think one of the first things that President Clinton would do is explain to people how much we do spend on foreign assistance. When you do polls, routinely people think we're spending 10%, 20% of our budget. I mean, they think we're spending a hell of a lot more than we actually are. So the facts need to be put out on the table. And I have a lot of trust in the American people. When they're told the facts, they get it.